The day Jon Snow left Winterfell, the sky did not brighten so much as thin, as if the clouds had been stretched by a cruel hand until they became translucent. Pale light seeped over the battlements and the yard below, finding the points of spears and the edges of armor, turning frost into a brief glitter before the wind scoured it away. They moved quietly, the way men did when they hoped quiet would keep trouble asleep. Jon had chosen few companions. For riders who knew the King's Road and kept their mouths shut. 2 of them Mormont men with hard eyes and scarred hands, and one from House Serwyn who had ridden messages through worse winters than this. No banners, no trampets. Davos Seaworth had approved of that, and Davos's approval always carried the weight of something earned. The leather tube lay hidden beneath Jon's layers, pressed between his ribs and the leather of his jerkin. He could feel it with every jolt of his horse's stride, as if the secret had found a pulse and insisted on matching his. At the base of the steps to the Great Hall, Sansa Stark waited. She wore dark wool and a cloak lined with gray fur that made her look carved from winter itself. Arya stood slightly behind her, hood up, face half-shadowed, but Jon could feel her eyes like knives, cutting through whatever distance he tried to build. Sansa stepped forward as Jon swung into the saddle. For a moment she said nothing. The yard bustled behind her. Men hauling sacks, a groom wrestling with a skittish horse, a pair of archers trading a jest too soft to reach them. But between Jon and Sansa there was a stillness that made the rest of it feel far away. "White Harbor," Sansa said, voice low. Jon nodded. Then Dragonstone. Sansa's mouth tightened on the southern name. "Remember what we said," she warned. "No heroics, no declarations." Jon's jaw worked once. "I'm not going to crown myself in someone else's castle," he said. Came out sharper than he meant. He softened it with effort. "I'll bring back what we need." Sansa's gaze held his, steady as a drawn line. "Bring yourself back," she said. The words struck him harder than all the talk of crowns and prophecy. For a heartbeat he saw her not as a lady playing a game she never asked to learn, but as his sister, small once, terrified once, and now fierce because she'd had to be. "I will," Jon promised, though he did not know what such a promise was worth against storms and dragons and the dead. Arya moved then, stepping to Jon's stirrup. She did not smile. She did not weep. She looked up at him as if committing his face to memory. "If anyone tries to stop you," Arya said, "send a raven, or don't. I'll know." Jon huffed a breath that might have been a laugh in kinder times. "You can't smell trouble from here," he said. Arya's eyes flicked toward the gate, toward the world beyond the walls. "Try me," she replied, and there was no boast in it, only certainty. Davos, mounted beside Jon, cleared his throat. "If we're finished with ominous farewells," he said, "the road won't get shorter by us staring at it." Sansa's lips twitched, faintly, then stilled. She stepped back, lifting her chin, resuming the posture Winterfell expected from her. Jon turned his horse toward the gate. The iron-bound doors stood open, beyond them the white sweep of winter and the gray ribbon of the road stretching south. The guards at the threshold saluted, fists thumping their chests. Jon lifted a hand in return. As they rode through, the wind surged, carrying a burst of snow that stung Jon's eyes and turned the world briefly into a blinding sheet. When it cleared, Winterfell's walls loomed behind him, dark stone against pale sky, and Sansa stood upon the steps like a lone flame refusing to go out. Jon did not look back a second time. If he did, he feared he might not keep riding. They passed beneath bare trees, their branches black fingers scratching at the sky. The land beyond Winterfell was quiet, the kind of quiet that made men speak softly, not for fear of being overheard but because loudness felt like a challenge to the cold. Hoofs crunched on frozen ground. The rider's breath rose in white clouds and vanished. After an hour, Davos leaned closer, his voice pitched low. "You did the right thing," he said. Jon's eyes stayed on the road. "I don't know what the right thing is anymore." Davos's mouth twisted. He said, "that's how you know you're taking it seriously." The King's Road pulled them south, and with every mile Winterfell became smaller behind them. until it was only a memory of stone and warmth and the faces of people who trusted Jon Snow to come back. They made camp where the trees grew thick enough to blunt the wind, though nothing truly blunted it this far north. Snow lay in uneven drifts between trunks, and the ground beneath was hard as old iron. One of the riders dug a shallow pit with an axe and a stubbornness Jon recognized as northern faith, and they built a small fire that fought for life against the cold. Night settled quickly, as it always did in winter, and the darkness beyond the firelight felt deep enough to drown in. The men ate in near silence, hard bread, dried meat, a strip of cheese that tasted faintly of smoke. Their horses stood close, flanks steaming, ears flicking at every sound. Jon sat with Longclaw across his knees, the sword's pommel heavy beneath his palm. The firelight caught on the metal, a brief shimmer, then slid away. He listened to the crackle of burning wood and the distant, occasional snap of ice shifting in the trees. Davos poured water from a skin into a tin cup and offered it. "No ale," he said with mock apology. "I know it's a hardship." Jon took the cup and drank. The water was so cold it hurt his teeth. "You've been quiet," Davos observed. Jon's mouth tightened. "I'm thinking." Davos gave a small grunt. "That's usually what quiet means." Jon stared into the fire. The flames ate at the wood in slow, hungry tongues. "How do you walk into a room full of enemies and ask them to help you?" he asked. "How do you make them believe you when believing you costs them something?" Davos's expression shifted, thoughtful. "You tell them the truth," he said simply. Jon's jaw worked. "The whole truth." Davos's eyes flicked to Jon's chest, to the place where the tube lay hidden. "Truth is a broad thing," he said. "Sometimes you give men a cupful at a time. If you pour the whole barrel on them, they drown." Jon let out a breath that fogged the air. "Sansa would like you," he muttered. Davos's mouth twitched. "I suspect Lady Sansa tolerates me," he said. "It's a different thing." Across the camp, one of the riders shifted, scanning the dark. The north was full of wolves and worse things, even before you counted what moved beyond the wall. Jon's hand rested on Longclaw's hilt without thinking. "You've served kings," Jon said. "Good ones, bad ones." Davos snorted quietly. "Mostly bad ones, a few who tried." "Stannis," Jon said, and the name carried its own ghosts. He remembered Stannis Baratheon's hard mouth, his relentless sense of duty, the way he'd stared at Jon as if measuring him for a purpose. Davos said. His gaze went distant. "A man made of iron and disappointment." Jon looked up. "He believed in prophecy," Jon said. "He burned for it." Davos's face tightened. "Melisandre believed," he corrected. "Stannis wanted to believe because it gave his suffering a reason. It told him his pain meant something." Jon's stomach twisted. He thought of Lyanna's words. He believed it because it burned him from the inside. He thought of Rhaegar Targaryen, a prince in songs, a man Jon had never known, carrying a secret like a coal. "I don't want to burn for a dream," Jon said quietly. Davos's eyes softened. "Then don't," he said. "Use it. Don't let it use you." Jon stared into the fire again. The flames popped, sending a spray of sparks into the night. They rose like tiny stars and died almost at once. "What if she laughs at me?" Jon asked, and he hated how vulnerable the question sounded. The Dragon Queen. What if she thinks I'm a northern savage begging for scraps? Davos rubbed his beard. "Then you let her laugh," he said. "And then you tell her what you've seen. Tell her about Hardhome. Tell her about the dead marching without fear. Tell her about the wall and how it won't hold forever. Even queens get quiet when they realize the world can end." "And if she doesn't?" Jon pressed. Davos's gaze was steady. "Then we find someone who will," he said. "But I'll tell you this. She didn't fight her way across the world just to sit and listen to flatterers. A woman like that will at least hear something that sounds like truth. She'll test you, mind. She'll test whether you bend." Jon's mouth tightened. "I don't bend easily." Davos gave a dry smile. "That's why you're still breathing." A sound came from the dark, then soft, a crunch of snow that wasn't wind. One of the riders stiffened, spear lifting. Jon rose in a smooth motion, Longclaw coming up, his body already moving toward the sound. The cold sharpened his senses. He felt his heart beat once, hard. Ghost emerged from the trees, pale shape sliding into the firelight. Frost clung to his fur, glittering. His eyes were bright, alert, and he moved with the easy confidence of a creature that belonged to this land more than any man did. The riders relaxed, though one cursed under his breath, embarrassed. Jon exhaled slowly. Ghost padded to him and pressed his head against Jon's thigh, as if reminding him, "You are not alone." Jon's hand found the direwolf's fur, warmth and life under his fingers. He glanced at Davos. "You see," Davos said, nodding toward Ghost. "Even when you think you're alone, you've got a bloody great wolf sneaking up on you." Jon managed a small, brief smile. It faded, but the tightness in his chest eased a fraction. He looked out into the night beyond the fire, where darkness pressed close, patient and hungry. "I keep thinking about what Bran said," Jon murmured. "Fire north. Fire into the north." Davos's gaze followed his. "Fire can warm," he said quietly, "or it can burn you to ash. Depends on who's holding it." Jon's fingers tightened on Ghost's fur. "Then we'd best hold it carefully," he said. The wind rose again, rattling branches, scattering snow like thrown salt. The fire guttered, then steadied. Jon sat back down, Longclaw across his knees, and listened to the night with a new kind of attention. Not only for threats in the dark, but for the shape of his own fate moving toward him like a storm. In Winterfell, the day did not belong to daylight. It belonged to duty. Sansa Stark stood at the head of the long table in the Great Hall, where maps were spread and wooden tokens marked supply routes and garrison points. The torches along the walls burned bright despite the hour, their smoke staining the stone overhead. The air smelled of hot wax, wet wool, and the faint metallic tang of sharpened steel. The Northern Lords had gathered because Sansa called them, and because they trusted the Stark name enough to answer even when they did not like the summons. Some wore suspicion like a cloak. Some wore exhaustion. A few wore pride, stubborn as ice. Lyanna Mormont sat on a bench too large for her, feet barely touching the floor, chin lifted like a challenge. Robert Glover leaned forward with his hands clasped, his eyes sharp as a crow's. Jon Royce from the Vale sat with his back straight, his bronze armor catching torchlight. There were Serwyn men, tall heart remnants, and a few lesser houses whose banners had been tattered by war and still flew anyway. Peter Baelish hovered near a pillar as if he did not wish to impose, which meant he wished very much to impose. His smile was mild, his eyes attentive. Sansa ignored him as best she could. Ignoring him did not make him harmless, but it did keep him from thinking he had her attention. She let the murmurs settle before she spoke. Silence in a hall full of proud men was never natural. It had to be earned or enforced. Sansa had learned the hard way how to earn it. "Jon has gone south," she said. The hall stirred at once, a ripple of voices. Someone swore, someone muttered. Robert Glover's face darkened. "Gone south?" Glover demanded. "Without telling his bannermen?" "He told me," Lyanna Mormont cut in, voice sharp as flint. "And that's enough." Glover shot her a glare. "He's our king," he snapped. "Not some wandering crow." Sansa lifted a hand, palm down, a gesture she had seen Cersei Lannister use to command a room without raising her voice. It felt strange to borrow anything from that woman, but if a tool worked, you used it. "He went to secure Dragonglass," Sansa said evenly. "And allies." A few of the lords exchanged looks. Dragonglass was not a word that belonged in northern councils. It sounded like a southern fancy, pretty expensive, useless. But the men who had fought with Jon, who had heard his warnings, did not laugh. "We have Dragonglass in the north," a Serwyn man said, hesitant. "Do we not?" Sansa's gaze sharpened. "Not enough," she replied. "Not by half. The Night King's army is not a raiding party. It is a tide, and we cannot fight it with steel alone. Jon Royce leaned forward. You believe the stories, then, he said, not mocking but testing. Sansa met his gaze. I believe what Jon saw, she said. I believe what my brother Bran has seen. The mention of Bran's name made some men shift uneasily. Bran Stark's return had been a miracle and an omen, and the North did not always know what to do with miracles. They made people nervous. They made them superstitious. They made them want to cling to old prayers and old fears. Robert Glover's jaw worked. And what if this dragon queen refuses? He demanded. What if she demands we kneel? I did not bleed for one king to kneel to another. Lyanna Mormont slammed her small fist on the table. If she has dragons and we need dragons, then we take the dragons, she declared, as if it were simple as taking an apple from a tree. Several men chuckled, but it was uneasy. Sansa did not smile. That is not a plan, she said, and neither is pride. Glover's eyes flashed. Pride is all we have left sometimes. Sansa's voice hardened. Then it won't keep you warm when the dead come, she replied. Silence fell then, heavier. Even Peter Baelish stilled, his smile fading into something more watchful. Sansa pointed to the map where tokens marked the wall. Every day we argue, the dead march, she said. Every day we refuse help. We shorten the list of living names. She looked around the table, letting her gaze linger on each face. Jon went south because someone has to, because if the South does not believe in our war, then they will die with their eyes closed. A tall heart man shifted. And if Jon dies down there? He asked, voice low. The question was meant as a knife. Found its mark anyway. Sansa felt the cold in her belly, but she did not let it show. Then the North will still stand, she said. And the lie tasted like ash because she did not know if it was true. We will fight. We will hold Winterfell. We will keep our people alive. Robert Glover leaned back slightly, studying her. You speak as if you're the one holding the crown, he said. Sansa met his gaze without blinking. I speak as the one holding Winterfell while Jon is gone, she replied. And that is enough. A murmur went through the hall, but this time it was not entirely hostile. Some men nodded. Some looked away, uncomfortable with the idea of a woman commanding them. But war had made them swallow many discomforts. Peter Baelish's voice slid into the silence like a thin blade. Lady Sansa is right, he said, tone gentle, supportive. Unity is our greatest strength. Sansa's eyes flicked to him. Unity coming from Peter was a dangerous word. He meant unity beneath him like wolves chained to a single post. We will not fracture, Sansa said firmly, cutting off any attempt he might make to steer the conversation. Jon's absence is not weakness. It is strategy. Jon Royce nodded slowly. Then we prepare, he said. We fortify, we stockpile, we train, and we watch, Lyanna Mormont added, eyes darting toward Peter Baelish as if she'd learned to smell rot. Sansa's mouth tightened. Yes, she said. We watch. The council moved on, grain shipments, patrol routes, the placement of archers on the walls, but Sansa's mind kept circling back to the secret Jon carried south. It sat in her thoughts like a sharp stone. Aegon. If the North learned, it could split in two, those who saw a Stark who belonged and those who saw a dragon who did not. If the South learned, it could ignite in a blaze of competing claims. Sansa kept her face calm as she answered questions and gave orders. She did not let her hand drift to the dagger at her belt, though she wanted to feel something solid, something she could control. Above the murmurs and the plans, she felt Winterfell's walls press in around them, stone holding against the cold. She wondered how long stone could hold against truth. Night in Winterfell was never empty. It was full of quiet labor, servants banking fires, guards pacing walls, ravens shifting in their roosts. And it was full of quieter things still. Old secrets settling into corners, new ones being made. Arya Stark moved through the castle like one of those quiet things. She did not walk the main corridors. She did not announce herself. She slipped through passages she'd climbed as a child and returned to as a stranger, her steps soundless, her breathing steady. The castle's stones knew her feet. They had always known her feet. She had been watching Petyr Baelish for days, the way you watched a snake coiled beneath a warm rock. He smiled too much. He listened too well. He lingered where he had no reason to linger. He did not belong in Winterfell, and he knew it, and that made him more dangerous. Arya followed him without being seen, and she learned the pattern of him. Where he ate, where he walked, where he spoke softly to guards who suddenly began to think well of him. He was planting himself in the cracks, like frost in stone. Tonight he had gone not to his chambers but to the library. The library smelled of old leather and dust, of ink and paper that had soaked up centuries. Arya paused outside the door and listened. A soft rustle parchment, the faint scrape of a chair, a whisper of breath. She eased the door open a finger's width and peered through. Petyr Baelish sat at a table with a single candle, the flame making his face look more angular, more shadowed. His fingers held a thin strip of parchment. He read it once, then again, lips moving without sound. Then he rolled it carefully and slid it into a raven tube. Arya's hand tightened on her dagger. The blade's familiar shape steadied her. Needle was in her room. This dagger was older, darker, the one she had taken from a dead man and carried like a piece of her own hardening. Petyr rose, moving to the raven cage by the window. His movements were practiced, casual, as if this were nothing more than a man sending a message about grain. The candlelight caught the curve of his smile. Arya waited until his hand reached for the cage latch. Then she stepped out of the shadows and closed the door behind her with a quiet click. Petyr froze, his fingers still on the latch. Slowly he turned, smile already in place, as if he had been expecting company all along. "Arya," he said, voice warm, "you walk softly, like a cat." Arya did not smile. "Cats kill birds," she said. Petyr's eyes flicked to the dagger in her hand. "That's an unpleasant way to greet someone," he said lightly. "I was only sending a message," Arya finished, her voice flat. "To who?" Petyr's smile did not falter, but his eyes sharpened. "To a friend," he said. "News travels slowly in winter. I like to keep informed." Arya stepped closer. Candlelight danced on her blade. "What news?" she asked.
"Petyr's case met hers."
"Your brother has gone south," he said. "It's natural to wonder why." Arya's jaw tightened. "It's not your business." Petyr's voice softened, as if offering comfort. "Everything that concerns Winterfell concerns me," he said. "I care about your sister. I care about you." Arya almost laughed. It would have been ugly. "You care about yourself," she said. Petyr's smile thinned. "We all do," he replied. "Some of us are simply honest about it." Arya took another step. She was close enough now that she could see the raven tube in his hand, could see the wax seal ready on the table. "Give it to me," she said. Petyr's brows rose slightly. "Is that how Starks ask for things now?" he asked gently. Arya's voice did not change. "I'm not asking." For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. The candle flame wavered, and shadows shifted along the shelves like watching faces. Petyr's eyes flicked to the door, to the window, to the dagger. He measured space the way he measured men, as opportunity, as danger. "I could shout," he said mildly. "Guards would come." Arya's expression did not shift. "And what would you tell them?" she asked. "That you were sending secret messages from Winterfell without Lady Sansa's knowledge?" Petyr's smile returned, faint. "Lady Sansa knows I send ravens," he lied smoothly. Arya's eyes narrowed. "Does she?" she asked, and the question was a hook. Petyr's gaze held hers, and Arya saw the smallest hesitation in him. Not fear. Petyr Baelish did not fear easily, but calculation. He did not know how much she knew. He did not know whether Sansa had given Arya permission to test him. He did not know if this was a trap. Arya stepped closer still, until her dagger was inches from his chest. She could smell the faint scent of perfume on him, something southern and wrong in Winterfell's dust. "I've worn other faces," Arya said softly. "I've heard men lie with their mouths and their eyes. You lie with your smile. Peter's expression remained composed, but his eyes cooled. Is this a threat? He asked. Arya tilted her head. It's a warning, she said. You're in my home. Peter's fingers tightened on the raven tube. Then, slowly, he set it down on the table. Take it, he said, tone even. If it eases your mind. Arya did not move at once. She watched his hands. She watched his eyes. She watched the way he stood, balanced like a man who might lunge. Finally, she reached out and took the tube, keeping her dagger up with her other hand. The tube was warm from his grip. She held it as if it were a snake. Peter spread his hands slightly, harmless. There, he said. No secrets. Arya's mouth tightened. She looked at the seal wax on the table. It was not Stark, not Lannister, just plain red, ready to be pressed into any shape. I'll show Sansa, Arya said. Peter's smile returned, but this time it did not reach his eyes. Of course, he said. You should. Arya backed toward the door, never turning her back. Peter watched her go, his gaze intent, and Arya felt his attention like a hand on her spine. When she slipped into the corridor, the cold air hit her face, sharp and clean compared to the library's dust. She held the tube tight and moved quickly through the shadows. She did not open it. She didn't need to. The act of sending it was enough. Peter Baelish was reaching outward, beyond Winterfell's walls, toward someone who could help him pry at whatever secret Jon Snow carried south. Arya's grip tightened until her knuckles whitened. Let him try, she thought. Winterfell had wolves now, and wolves did not share their prey. 3 days after Jon Snow rode south, Winterfell's gates opened for a different kind of traveler. Samwell Tarly arrived half-frozen and stubbornly alive, his cheeks raw from wind, his beard rimmed with ice. He wore furs that did not quite hide the shape of the man beneath, round-shouldered, broad in a way that spoke of softness rather than strength, and yet he held himself with a new firmness, as if he had decided that being afraid would not stop him from moving. Gilly rode in a cart piled with bundles, little Sam bundled in blankets against her chest. Her eyes were wide, taking in Winterfell's walls, its towers, its grim gray stone. She looked as though she expected the castle itself to lunge. The yard went quiet in the way it did when something unexpected disrupted routine. Men paused mid-task. A groom stopped brushing a horse. A guard at the gate leaned forward. Sansa Stark came down the steps with Brienne of Tarth at her side, Brienne's armor dull beneath a dusting of snow. Sansa's eyes narrowed as she recognized the man climbing stiffly down from the cart. Sam, she said, surprise and relief mixing in her voice. You made it. Samwell Tarly blinked at her as if he couldn't quite believe he was standing in Winterfell and not still in a nightmare of white roads and wolves. Then he gave an awkward bow that nearly toppled him. My lady, he panted. Hello. It's very cold. Sansa's mouth twitched, and for a moment she looked almost like a girl again. Then her gaze flicked past Sam to the archway behind him, where Bran Stark waited. Bran sat wrapped in furs, his expression distant, but his pale eyes fixed on Sam as if he'd been waiting for him specifically. That alone made Sansa's stomach tighten. Bran did not wait for people the way others did. When Bran waited, it meant something was already in motion. Sam saw Bran and went still. His face changed, recognition, then something like reverence and fear. He had seen Bran once before, a broken boy carried north of the wall. Now Bran sat like a lord beneath Winterfell stone and looked at Sam as if reading pages inside him. Bran, Sam said softly, and there was a catch in his voice. Bran's lips moved. You came back, he said.
Sam swallowed.
I did, he replied. He glanced at Sansa, then back to Bran. I found things at the Citadel about Jon, about your family, about all of this. Sansa's posture stiffened. Brienne's hand shifted slightly, close to her sword hilt, as if old habit demanded readiness when secrets approached. Come inside, Sansa said quickly, voice controlled. All of you, warm up, then we'll talk. Sam nodded, gratefully, and Gilly followed, clutching little Sam tighter. As they moved toward the hall, Sam stumbled once on the uneven stone, and Brienne caught his elbow with a steadying grip that made him flush. "Thank you," he muttered. Inside, the warmth of Winterfell's fires was a blessing that felt almost sinful after the cold. They brought Sam and Gilly into a smaller chamber off the Great Hall, one Sansa used for private meetings when she did not want the castle listening. A fire burned bright, hot broth was brought, and Sam drank it as if it were life itself. When the servants were gone, Sansa closed the door and turned the iron key. Bran sat near the hearth, his chair positioned so the firelight touched his face but did not soften it. Sam wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and looked at Sansa, then at Bran, then at Brienne, who stood like a silent wall. "I don't know where to start," Sam confessed, voice trembling slightly with exhaustion and urgency. "Start with what you found," Sansa said. Sam took a breath, gathering himself. "At the Citadel," he began, "I was copying old records and I found something. A journal, a High Septon's diary. It mentioned a marriage annulment for Prince Rhaegar Targaryen." Sansa's eyes sharpened. Bran's expression did not change, but his gaze did not waver. "And," Sam continued, voice quickening, "a second marriage, a lawful one. It wasn't just a love story. It was recorded, witnessed. It means," he swallowed hard, "it means Jon isn't. He isn't a bastard." The room seemed to tighten around the words. Even Brienne's eyes flickered, surprised. Sansa stared at Sam as if she had been slapped. She had known. She had read Lyanna's letter, she had seen the ring, she had heard Bran's quiet certainty. But hearing it from a maester's record, from the Citadel itself, was different. It gave the truth a harder edge. Sam looked from face to face, confused by their lack of shock. You already knew," he realized faintly. Sansa's voice was quiet. "We know," she said, "but we need proof that others will believe." Sam nodded quickly, eager. "That's why I came," he said. He fumbled in his bag, pulling out a bundle wrapped in cloth. He unrolled it carefully, revealing copied pages, inked lines in Sam's careful hand, seals sketched, margins noted. "There's more," Sam said, and his voice lowered. "There are mentions, scattered, old accounts, not in the main histories, in side notes, in letters from maesters assigned to Dragonstone centuries ago." He licked his lips, eyes darting to Bran as if seeking permission to speak what sounded mad. "They speak of a secret the Targaryens kept, a dream Aegon the Conqueror had, a warning about a darkness in the north." Sansa's breath caught. Brienne's brows drew together. Gilly, sitting quietly with little Sam, looked up, eyes wide, as if she'd heard this kind of story before in the mouths of wildlings. Bran's voice was soft. "Aegon's dream," he said.
Sam nodded rapidly.
"Yes, it isn't. There isn't one perfect scroll that spells it out, not that I found. But it's there, enough to piece together. They believed the realm needed to be united when the long night came again." His eyes flicked to Sansa. "And if Jon is who he is, if he's both Stark and Targaryen, then..." He trailed off, overwhelmed. Sansa felt the room tilt. Slightly. The letter in Jon's possession had said the same. Bran had said the same. Now Sam's ink and the Citadel's records said it too. 3 different paths leading to the same cliff edge. "Jon has gone to Dragonstone," Sansa said, her voice steady with effort, "to find proof there, and to speak to Daenerys Targaryen." Sam's eyes widened. "He went alone?" he blurted, then flushed and corrected himself. "I mean, he went without knowing, without this." "He went with what we had," Sansa replied. She glanced at Bran. "We need to help him from here." Bran's pale eyes shifted, distant for a moment. "He will find it," he said, "but the words aren't enough."
Sam swallowed.
"What do you mean?" Bran looked at him, and Sam felt, for a heartbeat, as if the boy's gaze went through his skin and into the marrow of him. "Men believe what they want," Bran said. "They need more than ink. They need fear." Sansa's stomach tightened. "We can't scare the realm into unity," she said. Bran's expression did not change. "The dead will," he replied. Sam shivered, though the fire burned hot. He glanced at Gilly, who held little Sam close, her face pale. Sansa took a slow breath. "Sam," she said, "you're going to copy these records again. 3 copies. 1 stays here. 1 goes to the Vale. 1 goes to White Harbor, in case ravens fail." Sam nodded, already moving toward his bag, mind racing with tasks he could grasp because tasks were safer than dread. Sansa's gaze flicked to Brienne. "Double the guards on the rookery," she ordered. "No ravens leave without my knowledge." Brienne nodded. "As you command." Sansa's eyes drifted to Bran again. "And you," she said softly, "if you see anything about Jon, tell me." Bran's gaze was distant again, fixed on something none of them could see. "I see water," he murmured. "Black stone. Fire in the sky." Sansa's heart clenched. "Dragonstone. Dragons. Jon." Outside, the wind battered Winterfell's walls as if trying to get in. Sansa lifted her chin. "Then we'll be ready," she said, though she did not know what ready meant in a world where prophecy was becoming paperwork and fear was becoming fact. White Harbor smelled like life. After days of frozen road and silent fields, the scent hit Jon Snow before the city came into view. Salt and fish and smoke, damp wood and pitch. The air was warmer here, not truly warm, but softened by the sea's breath. The snow underfoot turned to slush near the gates, and Jon's horse snorted, unsettled by the unfamiliar ground. White Harbor's walls were lower than Winterfell's but busier, crowded with men and movement. Ships' masts rose beyond the ramparts like a forest of spears. Gulls wheeled overhead, screaming as if they were the city's true lords. The sound of the sea, constant, restless, made Jon's skin prickle with a different kind of unease. They were brought through the city's twisting streets to Newcastle, where House Manderly kept its hall. The stones here were pale, the carvings ornate compared to Winterfell's stark severity. Tridents and mermaids, waves frozen in stone. Wealth displayed openly, as if daring the world to envy it. Lord Wyman Manderly received them in a hall hung with green and silver banners. He sat upon a chair that looked too small for him, his body vast beneath layers of rich cloth. His chins quivered slightly when he breathed. His eyes, however, were sharp as any northern lord's, and they weighed Jon with an intelligence that did not match the softness of his appearance. "Jon Snow," Wyman Manderly said, voice deep and measured. "Or should I call you king?" Jon inclined his head. "Jon is enough," he replied. Manderly's lips twitched. "Starks have always had a talent for modesty," he said, and there was a faint note of amusement. "It gets them into trouble." Davos stepped forward. "My lord," he said, "we're grateful you received us on short notice." Wyman Manderly's gaze slid to Davos, taking in the man's weathered face. His plain cloak, the look of a sailor who had learned to stand in halls without belonging in them. "Davos Seaworth," he said, "the Onion Knight. I've heard of you." His eyes returned to Jon. "And I've heard you've gone south for stone." Jon's jaw tightened. The rumor had traveled faster than he liked. "Dragonglass," he said. "We need it. There's more of it on Dragonstone than anywhere in the north." Wyman Manderly's fingers tapped the arm of his chair. "Dragonstone," he repeated, and his hall went subtly quieter. A southern island full of dragons in its history and foreigners in its present. Jon held his gaze. "The dead don't care if you're northern or southern," he said. "They'll kill us all the same." Wyman Manderly's expression shifted, the faintest hardening beneath the softness. "Aye," he said, "that's what you've been saying." Jon resisted the urge to bristle. "Because it's true." There was a pause. Then Wyman leaned slightly forward, and his voice dropped. "You've come at a time of interesting messages," he said. Davos's brow furrowed. "Messages?" he repeated. Wyman gestured, and a servant stepped forward carrying a small tray. On it lay a raven tube sealed with black wax stamped with a dragon. Jon's stomach tightened so hard it hurt. "The raven came 2 days ago," Wyman Manderly said, watching Jon closely. "It asked for you by name, and it asked that it be placed in your hands when you arrived." Davos let out a low whistle. "That's efficient," he muttered. Jon stepped forward and took the tube. The wax was unbroken. The dragon stamp glinted in the torchlight, stark against the black. He broke it carefully and drew out the parchment. His eyes scanned the lines, and the world narrowed to ink. "Jon Snow," it began, in a hand that was firm and unfamiliar. "I have received your raven. I will hear what you have to say. Come to Dragonstone under my protection. Bring whoever you require for counsel. You will be escorted into my presence, and no harm will come to you while you remain under my roof, so long as you come in peace. Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Undulls and the First Men, Protector of the Seven Kingdoms, Mother of Dragons." The titles piled like stones. Jon felt their weight. He looked up, meeting Wyman Manderly's gaze. "She will see you," Wyman said, and there was a question in the way he spoke it. "What does that mean for the North?" Jon folded the parchment carefully. "It means I have a chance," he said. "A chance to kneel." One of the Manderly men muttered behind his lord, barely audible. Jon's jaw clenched. Davos shifted, as if ready to step between Jon and a quarrel. Wyman lifted a hand, silencing the murmurs. He studied Jon for a long moment. "You'll have my ships," he said at last. "Not because I love Southern Queens, and not because I like the smell of dragons, but because I remember what the Starks did for the North." His voice deepened. "And because if the dead come, White Harbor's walls won't matter. The sea won't matter. Only steel and fire will." Jon's throat tightened. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. Wyman Manderly leaned back, his gaze still sharp. "Be careful with that queen," he warned. "Dragons don't share the sky easily." Davos's mouth twisted. "Neither do kings," he murmured. Jon slipped Daenerys's message inside his cloak. The leather tube pressed against his ribs, and for a moment he imagined the two pieces of parchment touching, secrets brushing in the dark. He thought of Sansa in Winterfell, fighting to keep the North steady. He thought of Bran's pale eyes. He thought of Lyanna's stone face. "I'll sail at first light," Jon said. Wyman nodded. "Then may the sea be kinder to you than it's been to the rest of us," he replied. As Jon and Davos were led from the hall, the distant sound of gulls and waves filled the spaces between words. Outside, White Harbor's docks bristled with masts, and the gray sea waited, restless, indifferent, carrying them toward dragons and destiny. Dragonstone did not welcome. It endured. The castle rose from the island like a clenched fist of black stone, its towers shaped like dragons frozen mid-roar. Inside, the air tasted faintly of salt and ash, and the walls seemed to drink torchlight rather than reflect it. Even the silence here felt different, thicker, older, as if it carried echoes of long-dead Targaryens whispering in the dark. Daenerys Targaryen stood at the painted table, the great carved map of Westeros stretching beneath her hands. Her fingers rested on the north, on the carved ridges where mountains rose in shallow relief and rivers ran like veins. The cold of the stone seeped into her skin, and she welcomed it. Cold reminded her she was alive. Tyrion Lannister stood beside her, holding a raven scroll. His face was composed, but his eyes were bright with curiosity, the way they always were when something new threatened to rearrange the board. "It's from Winterfell," Tyrion said. Daenerys did not look at him. "Winterfell is a long way from here," she replied, voice even. "Ravens fly faster than armies," Tyrion said, "and this raven carries an unusual request." Missandei waited near the edge of the chamber, hands clasped, her expression attentive. Varys stood in the shadows beyond her, pale and still, like a man who had learned to make himself unseen even in a room full of power. Daenerys turned her gaze from the table to Tyrion's face. "Read it," she commanded. Tyrion broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. His eyes moved over it, and Daenerys watched the subtle shift in him, the quickening of interest, the tightening of caution. He says, Tyrion began, that he has evidence of a threat beyond the wall. He asks for Dragonglass. He asks for a meeting. Tyrion hesitated, then continued. He writes as if he believes what he says will matter to you. Daenerys' mouth tightened. Every northern lord writes as if he believes his problems are the realms, she said. Tyrion's gaze flicked up. This one is different, he said softly. Daenerys took the parchment from him and read it herself. Jon Snow's handwriting was rough, the way men wrote when they used pens rarely and swords often. The words were blunt. There was no flattery, no begging, just a statement. The dead were coming, and the living needed to be won. At the bottom, a line in a different hand, neater, more careful. Added terms. A neutral meeting, proof provided, a purpose beyond crowns. Daenerys stared at the ink until it seemed to blur, until it became not words but a voice. The living need a king or a queen who can gather the realm. Not for glory, for dawn. It was not written there. It was in her own memory, in the old stories Viserys had spat at her as a child. The dreams of dragons, the prophecies of old Valyria. She had laughed at them once. She had believed them later, when fire did not kill her and dragons rose from stone. Prophecy was a dangerous word. It made fools brave and kings cruel. What do you think? Tyrion asked carefully. Daenerys folded the parchment. I think he wants something, she said. Of course he wants something, Tyrion replied. They all do. But he may also be telling the truth. Varys stepped forward, voice soft and smooth. Jon Snow has a reputation, he said. Among those who speak of the North, he is spoken of as honorable, stubborn, the kind of man who does not invent monsters to win a game. Daenerys' eyes narrowed. Honor does not make a man wise, she said. No, Varys agreed, but it sometimes makes him predictable. Missandei's voice was gentle. If there is danger in the north, she said, should you not know of it? Daenerys turned back to the painted table and placed her hand again on the north. Cold stone beneath her palm. Snow and wolves and darkness. She had never been there. She had never seen the wall. She had seen men die, seen cities burn, seen the sea swallow ships. She had never seen the world's edge. What proof does he offer? Daenerys asked. Only his word, Tyrion admitted. And whatever he claims to have found at Dragonstone. Daenerys' gaze sharpened. Found at Dragonstone? Tyrion nodded slightly. He mentions old carvings, he said, choosing his words carefully. Something that predates all of us. Varys' eyes flickered. The Targaryens kept Dragonstone long before they took Westeros, he said. There are chambers sealed for centuries, records, relics, perhaps even old prophecies. Daenerys felt a stir of something in her chest that was not fear. Not exactly. It was a strange, sharp curiosity, like a blade drawn half from its sheath. Prophecies had chased her all her life. The stallion who mounts the world. The prince that was promised. The whispering voices in the house of the undying. She had tried to be fire and certainty, to drown those whispers in the roar of dragons and the cheers of freed men. But the whispers always returned, curling around her thoughts when the night grew quiet. If he comes here, Daenerys said, what will he ask? Tyrion's eyes held hers. He'll ask for Dragonglass, he said. And perhaps for your dragons. Eventually, Daenerys' mouth tightened. And what will he offer? A chance to be seen as a queen who protects the realm, not merely conquers it, Tyrion said. His voice was soft, but the truth in it was sharp. Varys added quietly, and perhaps information you do not yet have. The North has been watching the darkness for a long time. We have not. Daenerys' gaze flicked toward the torches burning against black stone. Fire in a dead place. She thought of the Dothraki, fierce and proud, following her because she had risen from flame. She thought of the Unsullied, silent and loyal because she had given them choice. She thought of the people in Meereen who had cheered her and the people who had cursed her. She thought of Westeros, this carved map beneath her hands, land she intended to take, whether it loved her or not. If there was a war that did not care about thrones, if there was an enemy that could not be bargained with, then her conquest could become meaningless in a heartbeat. She hated the idea. It made her feel small, and she refused to be small. "Send a reply," Daenerys said. Tyrion exhaled softly, as if he'd been holding his breath. Daenerys's voice hardened. "Tell him he will be heard," she continued. "Tell him he will not be harmed under my roof. And tell him this." She paused, letting the words form carefully, like a blade honed to a point. "If he asks for my help, he will respect my claim. I will not be treated like a convenient fire to be carried north and discarded." Tyrion nodded. "Understood." Missandei's gaze softened. "You will meet him, then," she said. Daenerys looked down at the north on the painted table one last time, her hand resting on the carved shape of Winterfell. "Yes," she said, "I will meet him." Her eyes lifted, fierce. "And I will see if this northern king is as honest as they say." Outside, far above the black cliffs, a deep, distant roar rolled across the island, the sound of a dragon shifting in its sleep, as if the very stones remembered what it meant to burn. The sea was a different kind of cold. It did not bite like the north's wind. It soaked, creeping into bone, patient and relentless. At dawn, as White Harbor's bells tolled in the distance and gulls screamed overhead, Jon Snow stood on the deck of a Manderly ship and watched the city shrink behind them. The masts rose tall above, sails snapping hard in the wind. Ice crusted the ropes, and sailors' hands were raw and red where they hauled and tied. Davos Seaworth moved among them with the ease of a man returning to an old language. His voice cut through the wind, sharp and sure. He pointed, corrected, cursed softly when a knot slipped. The sailors listened, and Jon saw how quickly men trusted competence. A crown was one thing. Knowing how to keep a ship from capsizing in winter seas was another. Jon gripped the rail as the ship rolled, the horizon tilting like a cruel joke. His stomach lurched. He forced his breath steady through his nose, eyes fixed on the gray line where sea met sky. "You look like you're about to confess your sins," Davos said, appearing beside him with a grin that held more sympathy than humor. Jon swallowed hard. "The sea doesn't like me," he muttered. "The sea doesn't like anyone," Davos replied. "It just hasn't decided whether to kill you yet." Jon's mouth tightened. He looked out at the waves, dark, heavy, flecked with white foam. They rose and fell like the backs of beasts moving beneath the surface. The ship creaked and groaned, wood flexing under the pressure. "What if I fail?" Jon asked quietly, surprising himself with the question. Davos's expression sobered. "You've failed before," he said. "Everyone has. You got stabbed for it once." Jon's jaw clenched at the memory. Cold steel between ribs, blood filling his mouth, the shock of betrayal. He remembered the blackness after, the strange weightlessness. He remembered waking again, gasping, the world sharper and crueler than before. "This feels bigger," Jon admitted. Davos leaned on the rail beside him, gaze on the sea. "It is," he said. "So you do what you always do. You tell the truth. You stand your ground. You try not to be an idiot." Jon huffed a breath. "That last one is hard." Davos's mouth twitched. He agreed. The wind shifted, and the ship angled slightly, pushing through a band of thin ice that cracked and splintered beneath the hull. The sound made Jon's skin prickle, like bones breaking. He thought of Winterfell, of Sansa's steady gaze, of Arya's quiet threat, of Bran's distant voice. He thought of Sam arriving with records and ink, turning prophecy into evidence. He reached inside his cloak and touched the folded parchment of Daenerys's reply, feeling the shape of it through layers. It was strange, comforting in a way to know she had answered. It made her more real, more dangerous too. "Do you think she'll listen?" Jon asked. Davos's gaze remained on the water. "She'll listen to what interests her," he said. "Queens listen the way sailors watch the sky. They look for what might sink them." Jon's fingers tightened on the rail. And what interests her? Power, Davos said bluntly, then softer, and maybe something else. People don't cross the world because they're content. Jon glanced at him. You think she wants to be good, he said, the word tasting strange. Good was not a word often attached to rulers. Davos shrugged. I think she wants to believe she's good, he replied. That can make a woman do great things, or terrible ones. The ship pitched hard as a wave struck it, spraying cold water over the deck. Jon flinched, ice-cold droplets stinging his face. The sailors cursed and laughed, accustomed to being slapped by the sea. Jon wiped his face with his sleeve and stared ahead. Somewhere out there was Dragonstone, black cliffs and dragons. Somewhere out there was a queen who called herself protector of the Seven Kingdoms. Somewhere out there was the proof Lyanna had trusted would endure. As the day wore on, the sea grew rougher. Clouds thickened overhead, and the wind sharpened. The ship climbed a wave and slid down the other side with a lurch that sent Jon's stomach into his throat. He clung to the rail, jaw clenched, refusing to let the sea see him weak. Davos watched him with a kind of rough amusement. If you throw up over the side, he said, aim away from the sailors. They'll remember. Jon glared at him, then had to bite back a laugh that would have turned into nausea. I hate you, he muttered. Davos grinned. Join the club. Night fell over the sea like a lid. The sky cleared in places, revealing thin stars, cold pinpricks above endless dark water. The ship's lanterns burned, small pools of light on swaying deck. Jon stood near the mast, wrapped in his cloak, listening to the creak of wood and the slap of waves. He thought of the dead, of pale hands clawing at ice. He thought of Aegon the Conqueror dreaming centuries ago of the same darkness. He wondered what it felt like to know the end of the world was coming and still build a throne. A gust of wind blew, carrying a faint scent, sulfur, ash. Jon lifted his head, nostrils flaring. Davos saw it too. His expression sharpened, eyes narrowing toward the horizon. Dragonstone, Davos said quietly. Jon stared into the dark where the smell came from, heart pounding with something he did not want to name. Dragonstone rose from the sea like the spine of some ancient beast. Black cliffs slick with spray, jagged edges cutting into the gray sky. The castle above was darker still, its towers shaped like dragons' heads, mouths open to the wind. Jon felt as though he were approaching a place that did not belong to men. They did not dock at a bustling harbor. Dragonstone offered no welcome of nets and shouting sailors. The ship anchored offshore, and Jon and Davos were lowered into a smaller boat that pitched wildly in the surf. Two Manderly men rowed, faces set with grim determination as waves slapped against the hull. As they neared the shore, Jon saw figures waiting on the black sand. Soldiers in perfect formation, spears upright, armor glinting dully. Their helmets had no ornament, no personal mark. They looked less like men than like a wall made flesh, unsullied. Jon had heard of them, of eunuch soldiers trained to obey without question, to kill without hesitation. Seeing them here on black sand beneath dragon towers made the stories feel suddenly too small. At their front stood a man with hard eyes and a rigid posture. His skin was dark, his jaw set. He held his spear with the ease of someone who had been born with it in his hand. Grey Worm. Beside him, slightly apart, stood a woman with a calm face and watchful eyes. She wore simple dark cloth, her posture composed. Her hands were folded, but Jon sensed strength in the stillness. Missandei. The boat scraped against the shore, and the Manderly men jumped out to steady it. Jon stepped onto the black sand, boots sinking slightly. The sand was warm beneath the surface, heat lingering from the island's volcanic heart. It felt wrong, warmth in winter, warmth in a place that looked like death. Davos climbed out behind him, steady despite the rocking sea, as if his body remembered how to do this and did it without asking permission from age or cold. Grey Worm watched them approach, expression unreadable. His eyes flicked briefly to Davos, then settled on Jon, studying him with the blunt assessment of a soldier. You are Jon Snow, Grey Worm said. His voice was clipped, accented. "I am," Jon replied. Grey Worm nodded once. "You are expected," he said. "You will come." It was not an invitation. It was a command. Missandei stepped forward slightly, her voice softer. "Welcome to Dragonstone," she said. "Her grace will receive you soon."
Jon's gaze met hers.
"Thank you," he said, because courtesy cost little and sometimes bought more than it should. Missandei's eyes flicked over his face, his cloak, the sword at his back. There was curiosity there, but also caution. She had seen enough men come to this island with requests and lies. Davos inclined his head. "I'm Davos Seaworth," he said. "Here as counsel." Missandei nodded. "I know of you," she said, and Davos blinked, surprised. Grey Worm gestured, and the Unsullied shifted with a single, unified movement, turning toward the stone steps carved into the cliff. They did not look at Jon and Davos again. They did not need to. Their presence was enough to make the air feel heavy. Jon and Davos followed, boots slipping slightly on wet stone. The steps wound upward, carved directly from black rock, narrow and steep. The wind grew stronger as they climbed, whipping Jon's cloak and stinging his cheeks with salt spray. Above them, dragon-shaped gargoyles stared down, their stone eyes hollow and accusing. Halfway up, Jon paused for a heartbeat, looking out over the sea. The Manderly ship was a dark shape in the water, small against the vastness. White Harbor felt like another world now. Davos leaned closer. "Try not to look like you want to die," he murmured. "It's bad for negotiations." Jon huffed a breath, half amusement, half tension. "I'm trying not to," he replied. They reached the top of the steps and passed through an archway shaped like a dragon's open mouth. Inside, the air was warmer, smelling faintly of smoke and stone. Torches burned along the corridor, their flames steady despite the wind outside, as if the castle held its own breath. Jon's boots echoed on the stone floor. The sound seemed too loud in the long corridor. The walls were carved with dragons, wings spread, claws outstretched, scales rendered in meticulous stone. Every surface proclaimed the same message: "This is Targaryen." Jon felt the ring beneath his glove like a brand. They were led through winding passages and up another flight of steps into a vast chamber that opened onto the painted table room. Jon recognized it at once from tales. This was where Aegon the Conqueror had planned his invasion, where he had traced the lines of the realm before he made it bleed. Now, Daenerys Targaryen stood at the far end of the table, her silver hair braided back, her posture straight. She wore dark clothing that made her pale skin look almost luminous against the black stone. Her eyes were fixed on Jon as he approached. Tyrion Lannister stood slightly behind her, smaller, hands clasped, watching Jon with a look that was both curious and wary. Varys lingered near the shadows, face blank. Missandei moved to Daenerys' side, calm and poised. Grey Worm took his place like a statue at the edge of the room. Jon stopped at a respectful distance. He did not kneel. His spine felt stiff, as if Winterfell stone had lodged inside him. Daenerys' gaze flicked over him, taking in his fur cloak, the starkness of him, the sword at his back. Her face gave nothing away. "You are Jon Snow," she said. "I am," Jon replied. Daenerys' eyes narrowed slightly. "King in the north," she added, tone cool. Jon held her gaze. "I was chosen by my people to lead them," he said carefully. Daenerys' mouth tightened. "Your people chose incorrectly," she said. "There is only one queen in the 7 kingdoms." The words were sharp, meant to cut. Jon felt the urge to bristle rise, but he forced it down. This was not a hall of northern lords. This was a dragon's nest. "I didn't come to argue titles," Jon said. "I came because the dead are coming." Daenerys studied him. "So you claim," she said. Jon's jaw clenched. "I've seen them," he said, voice rough. "If you want proof, I can't give you a corpse that doesn't rot in your hands. But I can give you the truth." Daenerys' gaze did not soften. "Truth is a word men use when they want something," she said. Jon met her eyes and felt, for a moment, the force of her. Fire held in a woman's shape, a certainty sharpened by years of survival. He understood why men followed her. He understood why men feared her. "I want Dragonglass," Jon said, "and I want you to listen." Tyrion shifted slightly, his expression intent. Daenerys' gaze flicked to him, then back to Jon. "I will listen," she said at last, voice measured. "But you will show respect while you stand in my home." Jon's fingers tightened briefly beneath his cloak, brushing parchment and ring. He wondered how much respect a queen expected from a man carrying a secret that could shatter her. He swallowed and forced his voice steady. "Then let me show you something," he said. "Something here, on this island." Daenerys' eyebrows rose slightly. "Something on Dragonstone," she repeated. "And you claim to know my island better than I do?" Jon shook his head. "Not better," he said. "Just differently." Daenerys held his gaze for a long moment. Then she spoke to Grey Worm without looking away. "Take them to the caves," she commanded. "If he wastes my time, he will regret it." Grey Worm's jaw tightened. "Yes, Your Grace," he said. Jon exhaled slowly, tension coiling tighter and then shifting into motion. The next step was no longer theory. It was stone beneath his boots. The caves beneath Dragonstone breathed. Heat seeped from cracks in the stone, turning the air damp and warm. Water dripped steadily from jagged ceilings, each drop a quiet metronome counting time older than kingdoms. Torches cast flickering light across black glass walls that glittered like frozen fire. Dragonglass jutted in jagged shards from the rock, sharp as teeth. In places the stone looked melted, as if something immense had once breathed flame here and the world had hardened around it. Grey Worm led them down winding passages with two unsullied behind. Daenerys walked with measured steps, her posture unshaken, but Jon saw the way her eyes moved, alert, curious, taking in every detail. Tyrion followed at her shoulder, his expression half wonder, half calculation. Davos trailed near Jon, eyes narrowed, as if the cave might suddenly turn into a storm. Jon's breath came easier here than he expected. The warmth was strange, almost comforting after the North's cold, but it made him uneasy too. Warmth in winter could be a gift or a trap. "Your island has teeth," Davos muttered, glancing at the jagged dragonglass. "Everything here does," Tyrion replied, voice low. He glanced at Jon. "You said there were carvings." Jon nodded, eyes scanning the walls. He had never been here before, but Lyanna's words had been clear. Stone carved with words where salt air cannot wash them away. The caves were the only place that made sense, a place sealed beneath centuries of rock and secrecy. They passed a chamber where dragonglass formed a rough arch like ribs. The torchlight caught on it and threw sharp reflections across Daenerys' face. She looked almost otherworldly in the shifting light, like a figure half made of shadow and flame. "Why would there be writing down here?" Daenerys asked, her voice echoing softly. Jon's mouth tightened. "Because some secrets aren't meant for daylight," he said. Daenerys' gaze flicked to him. "You speak as if you know secrets," she said. Jon felt the ring beneath his glove, cold against his skin even in this heat. He did not answer. They descended deeper until the air grew thicker, the heat stronger. Steam rose in thin veils from narrow fissures in the stone. Jon's torch guttered slightly, then steadied. Then he saw it. A wall of black stone, smoother than the surrounding rock, as if it had been carved and polished intentionally. Across it, shallow grooves formed shapes, lines that were not natural cracks, not random marks. They were deliberate. Jon stepped closer, heart pounding. The grooves formed dragons, their bodies coiling around a central shape. Beneath them were symbols, runes or letters carved so carefully they had resisted time. Tyrion moved in beside him, eyes widening. "Well," he murmured, "that's not a miner's doodle." Daenerys stepped forward, her face lit by torch flame, her eyes fixed on the carvings, and for the first time Jon saw something like reverence in her. Not softness, Daenerys did not soften easily, but recognition. "This is Valyrian," Tyrion said, voice low. "Or close to it." Daenerys's gaze sharpened. "Can you read it?" she asked. Tyrion grimaced. "I can read a little," he admitted. "Enough to embarrass myself among scholars." Daenerys stepped closer and lifted her hand, fingertips hovering just above the carved lines. She did not touch it first. It was as if she feared the stone might burn her, or that touching it would make it real. Jon swallowed. "This is what Lyanna wrote about," he said quietly, then realized he had spoken too much. Daenerys's eyes snapped to him. "Lyanna?" she repeated, suspicious. "Lyanna Stark." Jon's stomach clenched. He felt Davos stiffen beside him. Jon forced himself to hold Daenerys's gaze. "A letter was found in Winterfell," he said carefully. "Hidden. It spoke of this." Daenerys's eyes narrowed. "A Stark letter led you to a Targaryen secret," she said, tone sharp. "How convenient." "It wasn't meant for you," Jon replied, and his voice came out rougher than he intended. "It was meant to keep the realm alive." Tyrion's eyes flicked between them, sensing the tension like a man watching two armed strangers circle. Daenerys turned back to the wall. "Read what you can," she commanded Tyrion. Tyrion leaned in, squinting, moving his torch closer. He traced a line with a finger just above the stone, not touching, as if the carving might bite. "Some of this is old," he murmured. "Older than Aegon's conquest. But there are additions. Different hand." He pointed at a section where the grooves were slightly deeper, sharper. "Here, this was carved later." Jon stepped closer. The symbols there looked more familiar, still strange but cleaner. A record made with intention. Tyrion sounded out a few syllables under his breath, brow furrowing. Then he looked up, frustration and fascination mingling. "It mentions a dream," he said slowly. Aegon's dream." Daenerys's breath caught, almost imperceptible. Tyrion continued, translating carefully, piecing meaning from fragments. "A darkness from the north, a winter that does not end." He frowned, sweat beading at his temple from the heat and effort. "It says the realm must be united. One realm, one purpose, against the night." The cave seemed to grow quieter, as if even the dripping water paused to listen. Daenerys stared at the carving, her face unreadable. Jon watched her, searching for mockery, for dismissal. Instead, he saw something else. A tightening around her eyes, a subtle shift in her breathing. The kind of reaction you had when something you had feared to believe suddenly reached out of myth and grabbed your wrist. "This is..." Daenerys began, then stopped. She swallowed. "This is why Aegon came here." It was not a question. It was a realization. Jon's throat tightened. "He didn't come only for crowns," Jon said softly. "He came because he saw what was coming." Daenerys's gaze snapped to him again. "And you believe you've seen it too?" "Oh," she said. Jon held her eyes. "I have," he said. "I've watched the dead move like a tide. I've watched them tear through men like paper. They don't fear dragons. They don't fear titles. They fear only fire and dragonglass." He nodded at the jagged black shards around them. "That's why I came." Daenerys's voice sharpened. "And what do you ask of me?" she demanded. "To hand you my island's weapon? To send my dragons to freeze and die in your snow?" Jon's jaw clenched. "I ask you to help the living," he said. "Because if the north falls, the south will fall after. Your throne won't matter. Your titles won't matter. Nothing will." Daenerys's eyes flashed, anger and something else. "You speak as if you are above kneeling," she said. "Above acknowledging the rightful queen." Jon felt Davos tense beside him, ready to speak. Jon lifted a hand slightly, stopping him. "I didn't come to challenge you," Jon said, voice steady with effort. "I came to warn you. This carving, your ancestors' words, should be warning enough." Daenerys stared at him for a long moment. The torchlight painted her face in gold and shadow. Somewhere deeper in the cave, Steam hissed from a fissure like a serpent. Tyrion watched Daenerys carefully, then spoke, voice cautious. "Your Grace," he said. "If this is true, if Aegon believed it, then ignoring it would be unwise." Daenerys' eyes flicked to Tyrion, then back to Jon. "If I help you," she said slowly, "the realm will see it as weakness. The realm will see you as a queen who saved them." Tyrion murmured, almost to himself. Daenerys' gaze returned to the wall, to the carved words that had endured centuries beneath stone. Her hand lifted at last, fingers pressing lightly to the grooves. She traced the shape of a dragon, then the deeper lines carved later, as if feeling the weight of the dream through touch. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but no less fierce. "You will have the Dragonglass," she said. Jon's breath caught. Relief surged through him so fast it made him dizzy. Daenerys turned, eyes locking on his. "But you will not take it as if you are stealing from me," she added. "You will mine it in my name, and you will swear to me that you will not use what I give you to rise against me." Jon's stomach tightened again. There it was, the hook beneath the gift. Davos opened his mouth, but Jon spoke first. "I swear I won't use Dragonglass to fight you," he said. "I swear I'll use it to fight the dead." Daenerys' eyes narrowed. "That is not what I asked," she said. Jon's jaw clenched. The cave felt suddenly smaller, the heat pressing. He could feel the tube beneath his clothes, the ring, the letter, the truth that could turn this conversation into flame. He met Daenerys' gaze and chose his words like stepping stones across thin ice. "I can't swear to something that would force the North to kneel without knowing you," he said. "But I can give you my word that I came here in good faith, and that I will stand with you against the Night King." Daenerys' mouth tightened, anger flickering, but also, Jon saw it, respect, reluctant and sharp. She had expected a man who would either kneel immediately or shout defiance. Jon did neither. He stood, stubborn as stone, but spoke of war that mattered. Daenerys looked at the carvings again, then back to Jon. "We will speak again," she said. "Above, in the light, not in caves." Her eyes flashed. "And you will tell me what you know. All of it." Jon's throat tightened. He nodded once. "I will," he said, though the word felt like a door opening onto fire. As they turned to leave, Jon glanced back at the carved wall. The grooves caught torchlight, shimmering like veins of dark flame. Aegon's dream, hidden in stone, waiting for the world to catch up. Jon felt the weight of history settle on his shoulders like a cloak too heavy to shrug off. Above them, somewhere in Dragonstone's heights, a dragon roared. A sound that shook dust loose from the cave ceiling and made the torches tremble. Daenerys did not flinch. Jon did, not from fear of the sound, but from the certainty that what he carried inside his cloak would soon collide with the woman who commanded that roar. And when fire met truth, the realm would either forge itself into one blade or shatter into ash. Night pressed against Winterfell like a hand against a shutter, cold and patient, and the castle answered it with groans. Timbers contracting, iron complaining in its sockets, the faint shiver of chains somewhere high in the yards. Jon Snow had tried to sleep and failed. The fire in his chamber burned low, smelling of resin and damp wood, and every time he closed his eyes he saw the same thing. A wall of pale faces, mouths open in a soundless scream, and behind them a sky the color of bruised steel. He rose without calling anyone. The guards in the corridor saw his movement, but they had learned the shape of his restlessness. No man asked him where he went when he carried his own torch and wore his sword. The crypts were colder than the night above. The first steps down took the scent of hearth smoke from him. The next took the last taste of bread and salt. Stone swallowed sound. Even Ghost padded quieter here, pale paws making no more noise than drifting ash. The direwolf's ears angled forward, then back, sensing what men could not. Jon's breath smoked, and the torch's flame bent and straightened as if the dark exhaled. The old kings of winter sat in their niches, hands wrapped around stone hilts, eyes carved with a stubbornness that survived death. Their shadows fell long and severe across the floor. Jon had walked this way as a boy, following his father's boots, trying to match his stride and failing. Lord Eddard Stark had always come here with a face he did not wear anywhere else. Harder, softer, both at once. He had never spoken much among the dead. Jon had thought, once, that the crypts held only silence and dust. He had learned at Hardhome that the dead could be neither silent nor still. He had learned at the wall that cold could make a weapon of bone. Still, Winterfell's crypts were different. They were the North's memory turned to stone, and that weight pressed on his shoulders more heavily than any cloak. He stopped before the statue of Lyanna Stark. She sat like the others, sword across her lap, but the carver had given her a liveliness the older faces lacked. A suggestion of motion paused rather than ended. Her eyes were stone, and yet, Jon's throat tightened. He could imagine them laughing. He did not remember her. He had only heard the stories. The wild sister who rode too fast, who spoke too sharp, who loved too fiercely. "Why am I here?" he murmured, and his voice seemed to fall into the dark without echo. Ghost's tail swayed once, slow and stilled. Jon lifted the torch. The light warmed her features into something almost human. The stone was clean here. Someone had brushed it recently. A few steps away, at his father's statue, the dust was disturbed as well. Winterfell had many hands now, but still Jon felt as if he'd been led by one. His fingers traced the base of Lyanna's tomb, following the line where stone met stone. There, a hairline seam where there should have been none, a whisper of wrongness. The seam had been filled and polished, but the mortar was a shade newer, the edge too straight, too careful. Jon's pulse quickened. He lowered the torch, angling it so the flame threw its light sideways, and the seam showed itself as a faint ridge. Jon set the torch in an iron sconce and drew his dagger. Not Longclaw, this was smaller, more intimate, the kind of blade you used for cutting rope, for prying loose stubborn knots. He slid the tip into the seam and pressed. The stone did not budge at first. Then, with a reluctant shift, it gave a fraction. Dust trembled down like pale snow. Ghost huffed, a sound deep in his chest. Jon wedged the dagger deeper and levered. The slab eased outward, revealing a hollow pocket, black as a throat. A chill slipped from it that was not simply the cold of underground stone. It was the cold of hidden things kept from light. Inside lay a leather tube wrapped in oilcloth, a ring of dark stone banded with gold, and a strip of parchment folded tight and sealed with a blob of old red wax that had cracked with age. Jon stared, his hand hovering, as if the hollow might bite him. The red wax seal bore a three-headed dragon. His stomach dropped as though he'd missed a stare. For a heartbeat he could not move. He heard, faintly, the drip of water somewhere deeper in the crypts, slow as a count. He thought of the way Maester Luwin's eyes had slid past questions. He thought of his father's silence in this place. He thought of the way Robert Baratheon had laughed too loud when he spoke of dead dragons. Jon reached in and lifted the tube first. It was heavier than it looked. The oilcloth stuck slightly to his glove, the scent of it sharp and old. The ring was cold enough to sting through leather. Its gold band was worn smooth on the inside, as if by years of skin. He held it up to the torchlight and saw the faintly mottled surface of the stone, like hardened smoke. Dragonstone, a voice in him said, though he had never held such a thing before. Last, he took the parchment, careful as if it were a living thing that might tear from a sigh. The wax seal crumbled a little under his thumb. He did not open it yet. He put the items back into the tube, wrapped them as they had been wrapped, and slid the bundle inside his cloak, close to the heat of his body. Then he replaced the stone slab and pressed until it sat flush, seemed nearly invisible again. Dust smudged his gloves. He rubbed them against his trousers and took up the torch. As he climbed, the crypts seemed to watch him go. The carved eyes of the kings of winter caught the torchlight and held it, refusing to blink. Ghost followed, silent as falling snow. But at the last step before the door he paused and looked back once, ears erect, as if listening to a voice Jon could not hear. Jon did not look back. He was afraid of what he might see if he did. The warmth of his chamber felt thin, like a blanket pulled too tight. Jon Snow set the leather tube on the table as if it were a weapon that might go off if handled wrong. The candle flames trembled whenever the wind found a crack around the shutters, and each tremble seemed to tug at his nerves. Ghost lay near the hearth, head on his paws, pale eyes following every movement Jon made. The direwolf's presence should have steadied him. Did, in a way. Ghost was real, solid, the North's truth made flesh. But the things on the table did not feel like the North. They felt like something dragged in from the South, something that did not belong beneath Stark stone. Jon unwrapped the oilcloth again and drew out the ring. He turned it between his fingers. The gold caught candlelight in a dull gleam. There were markings on the band, tiny, worn, almost smooth, but when he angled it just so, he saw the suggestion of flames and wings. A marriage ring, he thought, or a signet, or both. He set it aside and reached for the parchment. The red wax seal was fractured enough now that it broke without effort. The paper itself was thick and brittle at the folds, the edges frayed as if time had gnawed at them, but the ink held dark and clear. He unfolded it carefully. The script was elegant, noble hands trained by maesters in pride. Jon could read well enough, but the letters swam for a moment as though his eyes refused to accept them. Ned, it began. His throat closed. He had not expected that name. It was not Rhaegar, not Lyanna, not some grand title. Just Ned. The way a sister might write to a brother when the world had fallen away. If you are reading this, I am gone. I pray you never had to break stone to find my words. But I know you, brother. You carry burdens until they split you, and you will not look for help unless you are forced. Jon's fingers tightened on the page. The ink did not smudge, but he felt as if he were crushing it. He read on. I have done a thing the world will call shame and the songs will call love. It is neither. It is war, quiet war, fought in beds and in birthing blood. Do not hate him for what the realm will say. He did what he thought he must. I did what I chose. There is a child. My child. Your blood. His blood too. The realm cannot know. Robert would kill him for the name in his veins. He will not listen to reason. Grief has made him deaf. Hide him as you would hide your own heart. Give him your name if you must. Give him no name at all if it keeps him breathing. But when he is grown, when he is strong enough to stand without your shadow, tell him the truth. Tell him who he is and why. Do not let him learn it from knives. A shiver ran through Jon that had nothing to do with the cold. Jon Snow, he thought, as if tasting the name for the first time. Bastard of Winterfell. Black brother. King in the north. Names had piled on him like armor, each one heavy. And underneath them, he read the next line twice because his mind refused to hold it. His name is Aegon. The candle flame jumped. Ghost lifted his head, ears pricking, as if the name were a sound he recognized. Aegon, the name of conquerors and kings. A name sung in halls far from Winterfell, a name that belonged to dragons and the south. Jon's stomach twisted, not with pride but with nausea. The letter continued, and his eyes followed, helpless. There is more you must know, Ned. This is why I hid this where only Starks would ever dare disturb it. The dragons did not come to Westeros only for crowns. Aegon the Conqueror carried a secret like a coal in his chest. He dreamed of a winter that would not end, a darkness that would swallow every castle light. He believed the realm must be one people, one purpose when that winter came. He passed this secret to his heir, and his heir to theirs, like a torch through generations. I learned it from Rhaegar. He believed the dream, believed it more than any prophecy whispered by Wood's witches and fools. He believed it because it burned him from the inside. He said the living would need a king or a queen who could gather the realm, not for glory, for dawn. Jon's hand trembled. The parchment crackled softly. Tell the boy this. Tell him the dream is not a song. It is a warning. And if you die before you can, if you cannot bear to speak it, then send him to Dragonstone. There is stone there older than our walls, and words carved where salt air cannot wash them away. If he is to live, if any of us are to, he must find what lies there. Forgive me, Ned. Forgive me for leaving you this. Forgive me for loving you enough to put this in your hands. And if you ever doubted whether I meant it when I said I would rather die than see him harmed, know that I meant it. I died with his name on my lips. Lyanna. Jon's vision blurred. For a moment he saw not the words but blood. Dark on sheets, dark on hands, and his father's face bent close, mouth tight as if holding back a sob. Promise me, Ned. A ghost of a voice whispered, and Jon flinched so hard his chair scraped. He pressed his palm against the page, flat, as if he could press the past back down into paper. His breath came quick. He wanted to tear the parchment in half. He wanted to run back into the crypts and shove it back into the stone and pretend he had never pried it loose. He wanted, impossibly, to ask Ned Stark what the truth was supposed to feel like when it finally found you. Ghost rose and came to him, large head nudging Jon's knee. The direwolf's warmth was grounding. Jon buried his fingers in Ghost's fur and held on. Aegon, he whispered, and the name felt wrong in his mouth, too sharp at the edges. Aegon Targaryen. A bastard could be anything. A king could be killed. A dragon. Outside, the wind hammered snow against the shutters like fists demanding entry. Jon looked down again at the line about darkness swallowing castle lights. He saw the pale faces in his dreams. He saw the army of the dead moving, without sound, endless as a tide. This wasn't only about who he was. It was about what was coming. He folded the letter carefully, hands steadier now with a different kind of fear, and slid it back into the tube. Then he sat, staring at the ring until the candles burned lower and the hearth gave off more ash than flame. At last, he pushed back from the table. His legs felt as if they belonged to someone else. He could not carry this alone. He would not anymore. Dawn came late in winter, like a reluctant promise. When Jon Snow knocked on the door of Sansa Stark Solar, the sky beyond the narrow windows was the color of watered milk. He half expected no answer. Sansa slept little these days, but her voice called him in before his knuckles struck a second time. The room smelled of ink and wool and cold stone that refused to take warmth. Papers littered the table. Tallies of grain stores, lists of names, messages scrawled in various hands. A half-eaten crust of bread lay forgotten beside a pot of drying ink. Sansa stood over it all with her sleeves rolled, hair braided tight as armor, her face composed in a way Jon recognized too well. It was the face of someone who could not afford to break. She looked up when he entered, and her eyes narrowed just slightly. Not suspicion, exactly, but awareness. She had always been good at noticing the weight others tried to hide. "You look as if you've seen a ghost," Sansa Stark said. The words were flat, but concern threaded beneath them like a hidden stitch. "Maybe I have," Jon Snow replied, and realized as he said it that it was true. He set the leather tube on the edge of her table, careful not to disturb the neat stack of ledgers. His fingers lingered on it a moment, reluctant to let go. Sansa's gaze dropped to the tube, then returned to his face. "What is this?" "Something I found," Jon said. He did not trust his voice to carry further without cracking. He forced himself to meet her eyes. "In the crypts." Sansa's posture tightened, the way it did when bad news arrived on raven wings. The crypts were sacred. The crypts were safe. Only the living made them dangerous. "In whose tomb?" she asked quietly. Jon's mouth went dry. "Lyanna Stark's." For the first time, Sansa's composure slipped enough for a flicker of surprise to show. She had never known Lyanna either. But Lyanna's name carried weight in Winterfell like an heirloom. Handled with care, spoken with a kind of reverence. Sansa moved around the table and stood closer. Her hands did not reach for the tube, but Jon saw the way her fingers curled. "Ready." "Show me," she said. Jon hesitated. The urge to keep it locked inside his ribs rose again, fierce and instinctive. But he had come here because that instinct had led him into too many lonely storms. He unwrapped the oilcloth with slow fingers and laid the parchment on the table. He did not offer the ring at first. The dragon on it felt like a brand. He wasn't ready to see it in her hands. Sansa unfolded the letter, her eyes scanning quickly, drinking in meaning the way she drank in a room full of lords, taking everything, missing nothing. Jon watched her face as she read. First, it remained still. Then her brows drew together. Her mouth tightened. When she reached the line with the name, she paused long enough that Jon felt the moment hang between them like a blade. His name is Aegon. Sansa Stark's breath caught, just once. She lifted her gaze to Jon's, and in her eyes Jon saw a calculation begin. Not cold, but rapid, like a mind snapping into place in a crisis. She read on, slower now. When she reached the mention of Aegon the Conqueror's dream, her fingers pressed harder into the parchment, as if trying to feel truth through paper. When she finished, she did not speak at once. Silence stretched, filled by the distant clatter of a bucket in a corridor and the soft scratch of wind at the window. Sansa folded the letter with meticulous care and set it down. Jon realized his hands had begun to shake again. He clenched them at his sides. "You believe this?" Sansa said, not as a question. "I believe it came from Lyanna," Jon replied. His voice sounded strange to him, scraped raw. "And I believe my father, Ned, kept this secret his whole life." He swallowed. "That means something." Sansa's gaze flicked to the tube, to the oilcloth, to the blank space where the ring remained hidden. "Is there more?" Jon drew the ring out and placed it beside the letter. Sansa's eyes widened a fraction, recognizing what he couldn't explain. "That looks," she began. "Like it doesn't belong here," Jon finished. "But it was there, with her words." Sansa Stark stared at the ring as if it might bite. Then she looked back at Jon, and something soft, painful, crossed her face. "All this time," she said, and there was a tremor in it now. "Father!" Jon's throat tightened. "He carried it alone." Sansa's fingers hovered over the letter again but did not touch it. "And now you want to carry it." "I don't want to," Jon said, honest enough that it hurt. "But I have it, and the dead are coming." He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice though they were alone. This isn't only a claim. It's a warning. Lyanna wrote that the realm must be won when winter comes. She wrote that there is more at Dragonstone. Sansa's jaw set. "Dragonstone?" she repeated, tasting the word like a bitter herb. Jon watched her mind work. He had seen her in councils, turning chaos into lists, fear into plans. He had also seen how quickly plans could turn to ash when men learned to use secrets as weapons. "We cannot show this to the First Lord who asks what you found in the crypts," Sansa said. "We cannot even tell them you went looking. This," she gestured sharply at the ring, at the dragon seal, "this could shatter us." "It could," Jon agreed. "Or it could save us." Sansa's gaze held his. "Then we need someone who will not panic. Someone who will tell us what this looks like to men who don't kneel to old gods or old loyalties." Jon knew who she meant before she said it. "Ser Davos," Sansa Stark said. Jon nodded once. "Send for him." Sansa's lips pressed together. "And Jon." She stopped, as if the name itself had become complicated. "Whatever this says, whatever blood you have, you are still the man who came back from death for us." Jon felt something twist in his chest. Not comfort, not peace, just the sharpest edge of gratitude. "I don't know what I am," he admitted. Sansa Stark's eyes did not waver. "Then we'll find out, carefully." Davos Seaworth arrived without ceremony, as he always did, boots carrying the smell of the yards and the sea that still clung to him in some invisible way. He entered the chamber Sansa had chosen, small, stone, with only one door and a narrow window that let in more cold than light, and gave them a look that took in Jon's rigid posture, Sansa's tight hands, and the leather tube on the table. "Well," Davos said, voice rough, "this feels like the start of trouble." Jon almost laughed. Came out as a breath. Sansa closed the door herself and slid the iron bolt. The sound of it locking into place felt final. She gestured to the chair across from the table.
Siéntez vos.
Davos sat, though his eyes remained alert. scanning corners as if expecting an assassin to step from behind the tapestry. "If this is about grain, I'm no use." "It isn't," Jon said. He pushed the tube toward Davos. His fingers hesitated, then let go. "Read." Davos lifted the parchment with hands that had once smuggled onions through a siege and now held the fate of kingdoms in a rough grip. He read slowly, lips moving on some words as if tasting them, brow furrowing deeper with each line. When he reached the name, he stopped. Jon felt the pause like a blow. His heart thudded against his ribs. Davos looked up at Jon Snow. His eyes were pale and honest, the eyes of a man who had looked upon kings and found them all wanting in some way. "Aegon," Davos said quietly. "That's what it says." "That's what it says," Jon replied. Davos looked down again, read on. When he reached the passage about Aegon the Conqueror's dream, his mouth tightened. "Seven save us," he murmured. He finished the letter and set it down carefully, like something holy. Then he rubbed his beard, staring at the ring. "That stone," Davos said. "Dragonstone. I've seen rings like it on men who thought themselves better than the rest of us. I didn't think I'd see one on this table in Winterfell." Sansa's voice was controlled, but Jon heard the strain beneath it. "Does this feel true to you?" Davos exhaled slowly. "Truth is a slippery thing when it comes dressed in pretty ink." He tapped the parchment with one thick finger. "But this isn't written like a mummer's trick. It's written like someone who knew they'd be dead and still wanted their words to matter." Jon's throat tightened again. It was hidden in stone. Davos said. "That's a Stark way of keeping a secret. Not clever, just stubborn." Sansa's gaze sharpened. "If word of this gets out." "It will," Davos said, not cruelly, just plainly. "Everything gets out eventually. The question is whether it gets out on your terms or your enemies." Jon's hands curled into fists on his knees. "If I am who it says I am, you are Jon Snow." Davos cut in gently, and Jon blinked. Davos leaned forward slightly. "You're the man who led the Night's Watch. The man who stood against Ramsay Bolton. The man who took the North back. Whatever blood runs in your veins, it doesn't change what you've done. It changes what men will demand," Sansa said. Davos nodded toward her. "Lady Sansa's right. Some will demand you take a crown you might not want. Some will demand your head. Some will call you liar and traitor. And if there's a dragon queen in the south like the rumors say..." He trailed off, eyes narrowing. "It makes a dangerous mix." Jon's jaw clenched. Lyanna wrote about a dream, a warning. Davos picked up the letter again, his eyes going to the lines about darkness swallowing castle lights. "I've sailed in storms where the sea tries to eat you alive," he said. "And I've watched a boy kneel to men who'd have killed him for sport. I don't put much stock in prophecies." He paused. "But I put stock in fear. And I've seen the fear in your eyes when you speak of what's beyond the wall." Jon didn't deny it. Fear was a thing he had tried to make into a tool, something he could use to drive men into battle. But fear also hollowed you if you let it. Sansa stepped closer to the table. "Dragonstone," she said again, and this time the word carried intention. "If there is something there, proof, perhaps, or more of this dream, then we need it." Davos's gaze flicked to Jon. "And you think you can just walk down there, show them a ring and a letter, and have them believe you?" Jon's mouth twisted. "I don't know. That's honest," Davos said. "And honesty is rare. It's also not always useful." He sat back and regarded them both. "If you go south with this, you do it with care, with witnesses, with something more than a secret you dug from stone." Sansa's eyes moved toward the narrow window where the sky was brightening by degrees. "Bran," she said softly. "Bran has visions." Jon's stomach clenched at the thought. Bran Stark's eyes had become strange, distant pools that looked through you rather than at you. Jon had tried to protect him, but there were things about Bran that frightened him more than swords. Davos frowned. "The boy in the chair? The three-eyed raven," Jon said, and Davos's mouth tightened, as if he didn't like the taste of that title. Sansa's voice sharpened. He knows things no one has told him. If he can confirm this, confirm anything about Dragonstone, about Aegon the Conqueror's dream, then we have more than ink and stone. Davos considered, then nodded slowly. Then we speak to him, and we keep this, he gestured to the letter and ring, locked away from every curious tongue in this castle. Jon reached out and took the tube again, tucking it inside his tunic as if it were a wound. The paper pressed cold against his chest. Ser Davos, Jon said, if this is true, if the realm needs to be won. Davos's eyes softened, just slightly. Then we'd best start making it so before the dead make the decision for us. The gods would held its own kind of winter. Snow lay in soft drifts beneath the heart tree, but the red leaves clung stubbornly to the branches, bright as fresh blood against the pale sky. The air smelled of damp bark and old earth, and the silence there was not the dead silence of the crypts but a living stillness, like a breath held. Bran Stark sat beneath the weirwood in his high-backed chair, wrapped in furs, hands resting on the armrests as if they were too heavy to lift. His eyes were open, but Jon could not tell what he was looking at. Sansa approached first, steps careful on the frozen ground. Jon walked beside her. Davos followed, boots crunching softly, his gaze never leaving Bran's face. Two guards lingered at the edge of the trees, far enough away to pretend they could not hear. In the Godswood, secrets carried on air as easily as prayer. Bran, Sansa said. No answer. Bran's gaze remained fixed, pale and distant. Jon felt a flicker of irritation, then guilt for it. Bran had been a boy who climbed walls and laughed. Now he sat like a carved thing, like one of the statues in the crypts. Jon knelt in the snow so his face was level with Bran's. Bran, Jon Snow said softly. It's me. A slow blink. Then Bran's eyes shifted, settling on Jon in a way that made Jon's skin prickle. It wasn't the look of a brother recognizing a brother. It was the look of someone recalling a detail from long ago. You went into the crypts, Bran said. Jon's throat tightened. Yes. You weren't supposed to find it yet, Bran said, and his voice was calm, almost indifferent, as if he were remarking on weather. Sansa's fingers clenched around the edge of her cloak. Find what? Bran's gaze drifted past her, toward the heart tree's carved face. The words, he said. The ring. Davos made a low sound in his throat. He knows already. Jon swallowed. He reached into his tunic and drew out the leather tube, hands stiff with cold. He did not open it. He didn't need to. Bran's knowledge made it feel exposed anyway. Bran's eyes returned to Jon. You read it. Jon nodded. Tell me it's not true. Bran did not answer at once. The wind stirred the red leaves, making them whisper against one another like dry paper. Somewhere a raven croaked. It is true, Bran said at last. You were born in the Tower of Joy. Your mother was Lyanna Stark. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. The words struck Jon even though he had read them. Hearing them spoken aloud made them real in a way ink could not. Jon's mouth went dry. He felt Sansa shift beside him, as if steadying herself. Davos's eyes narrowed. And this dream? This conqueror's secret? Bran's gaze slid away again, and Jon felt as if Bran were looking down a long corridor only he could see. Aegon Targaryen came to Westeros because he saw a darkness beyond the wall, Bran said. A winter that would not end. He believed the realm had to be united to survive it. Jon's heartbeat seemed too loud in the quiet Godswood. How do you know? Bran's eyes moved back to him. For a moment, something like weariness showed there, as if carrying too many years inside a boy's skull was a burden that bent even magic. I saw it, Bran said simply. Sansa's voice was tight. Saw it where? In the past, Bran replied. In Dragonstone, in King's Landing, in Harrenhal, in places that aren't places anymore. His gaze flicked toward the heart tree's carved eyes. The secret was passed from king to heir. It was meant to keep them from tearing the realm apart when winter came. Jon felt a bitter laugh rise in him and swallowed it. They tore it apart anyway. Bran's face did not change. They forgot why it mattered. Davos exhaled, breath misting. So the letter's right. There's something at Dragonstone. Bran's fingers twitched, just slightly. There is, he said. Stone carved with words. A record. Proof. Sansa's eyes sharpened. Proof that could convince lords. Bran's gaze lingered on her, and for a moment Jon saw something like pity there. Some will never be convinced, Bran said. Some will use it for themselves. But it's there. Jon's stomach churned. The idea of going south again, of kneeling before another ruler, of dragging the North into southern wars, made him want to spit. But the letter's warning lay against his chest like a weight. If I go to Dragonstone, Jon said, what happens? Bran's eyes seemed to focus on Jon more clearly than before. You bring fire north, he said. Or you bring fire into the north. I can't tell the difference yet. Sansa stepped closer to Jon, her voice low. We have to be careful, she said, as if Bran had not spoken. If this spreads, if anyone hears you have a claim stronger than any king. I don't want a claim, Jon snapped, then immediately regretted the harshness. He forced himself to breathe. I want the dead stopped. I want our people alive. Davos's voice was steady. Then we follow the proof. We don't let rumor beat us to it. Bran's gaze drifted to the heart tree again. You were meant to know, he said almost to himself. Just not like this. Jon stared at him. Why not? Bran's voice was quiet. Because secrets make men do stupid things. And this is the kind of secret that starts wars. Sansa's mouth tightened. Wars are coming whether we want them or not. Jon looked up at the heart tree's face, carved eyes weeping frozen sap. The red leaves rustled like whispered names. Tell me one thing, Jon said, voice rough. This dream, this warning, can it be stopped? Bran's eyes returned to him, and for a moment Jon thought he saw something ancient and lonely in them. It has to be, Bran said, or all of this. He glanced around the Godswood. The castle beyond. Won't matter. Winterfell's great hall was never truly quiet. Even when no feast filled it, there were footsteps, murmurs, the scrape of benches, the hiss of torches. The castle breathed through its people, and its people brought their needs like offerings. More grain, more men, more cloaks, more certainty. Jon Snow walked through it with the letter pressed against his chest, hidden beneath fur and leather. He could feel it there with every breath. It was absurd. A piece of parchment changing the weight of the air around him, but that was how it felt. Like the world had tilted slightly and his feet had not caught up. Sansa Stark moved beside him with the practiced calm of a woman who had learned to wear fear as a mask. Davos kept to Jon's other side, a steady presence, his gaze flicking over the room as if measuring where danger might come from. They did not head for the high seat. They headed for a narrow passage behind the dais, where the stone muffled sound and the torches cast more shadow than light. There, with only the distant hum of the hall, Sansa stopped. We cannot keep meeting in locked rooms, she said. People notice patterns. Davos made a quiet sound of agreement. They notice everything when they're looking for leverage. Jon leaned back against the cold stone. Then what do we do? Sansa's eyes held his. We decide what this is before someone else decides for us. Jon's jaw tightened. It's the truth. It's a weapon, Sansa corrected, and her voice did not soften. Truth is always a weapon, Jon, especially in the hands of men who want power more than they want peace. Davos nodded. Lady Sansa's not wrong. If word spreads that you're the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, half the realm will try to put you on a throne and the other half will try to put you in the ground. I don't want either, Jon said. Sansa's expression shifted, something sharper flashing in it. Want has nothing to do with it. You've seen what people do when they think the gods favor them. Jon thought of Stannis Baratheon's eyes in the glow of Melisandre's fires. Thought of the way men had cheered when a child burned. He felt sick. Davos's voice came low. We keep it contained. We gather proof. We choose the moment. Sansa's gaze went distant, calculating. Dragonstone is far, she said. And the North is tired. If you leave, the lords will ask why. If you tell them you're chasing some southern relic, they'll call it folly. If you tell them the truth, her mouth tightened. They might fracture. Jon's hands curled. They believe in me. Sansa looked at him for a long moment. They believe you are a Stark, she said gently, and the gentleness hurt more than any sharpness could have. They believe you are one of them. If they learn you are also something else, something their fathers fought against, they will not all react the same way. Jon swallowed. And if they don't unite, they die. Davos exhaled. He said, that's the knot we're in. Jon closed his eyes for a moment. He saw Bran's pale stare. He heard Lyanna's words on paper. He felt the cold of the crypts. What about the Southern Queen? Jon asked, voice rough. The one with dragons. Sansa's eyes narrowed. Daenerys Targaryen. Davos's mouth twisted. If the stories are true, she's taken cities across the sea, freed slaves, burned men alive. Probably all of it is true and none of it is. He looked at Jon. If you have a claim and she has dragons, it could be either the end of the world or the only chance we have. Jon stared at the torchlight staining the stone. If she believes this dream, if she believes Aegon's warning, maybe she'll bring her dragons north. Sansa's voice was quiet, but iron ran through it. And if she believes you are a threat to her claim, she may bring them for a different reason. Jon's stomach nodded. He had not feared much since he died. It was as if death had burned fear out of him and left only purpose. But this was different. This was a fear with many faces. Politics, betrayal, war between the living while the dead advanced. Davos leaned in slightly. You can't fight the dead with pride, he said. You can't fight them with banners either. If this prophecy is real, it doesn't matter whose backside sits on what chair. It matters whether we stand together. Jon opened his eyes. Then we go to Dragonstone, he said, the words leaving his mouth with the weight of decision. We get whatever proof is there. We approach Daenerys with it, not as rivals, as allies. Sansa studied him. You're willing to risk the North's anger? Jon felt the rings cold in his mind. I'm willing to risk anything if it keeps them alive. Sansa's mouth tightened into something like approval, though worry still lived beneath it. Then we do this quietly, she said. No proclamations. No songs. We move like we're hunting, not like we're marching. Davos nodded. I'll arrange ships. Jon glanced out into the great hall where northern lords spoke in clusters, unaware of the dragon seal hidden beneath his cloak. For a moment, he envied them their ignorance. Then he remembered the pale faces in his dreams, and envy curdled into urgency. The castle had ears, and Peter Baelish fed them like pets. Sansa Stark felt his presence before she saw him. There was a particular kind of silence that followed him, not because he was quiet, but because people became careful around him. When she stepped into the corridor outside the solar, torchlight caught on the edge of his dark cloak and turned his eyes into warm pools of shadow. My lady, Peter Baelish said, as if he had been passing by purely by chance, as if Winterfell were not a maze he had learned to navigate in pursuit of power. Lord Baelish, Sansa replied, stopping without looking surprised. She had learned that giving him any sign he had unsettled her was like giving a dog blood and expecting it not to lick. His gaze flicked past her shoulder, toward the door she'd just left, and for a heartbeat Sansa saw hunger in it. Curiosity sharpened to a point. I heard you were meeting with the king in the north, Peter said lightly. And Ser Davos, such a small council for such heavy times. Sansa's mouth remained composed. Winter is heavy, she said. It doesn't require an audience. Peter smiled. Of course. Still, a ruler's burdens are easier when shared with trusted advisors. Sansa heard the offer in the way he said it. I am here. Use me. Let me in. She did not let her gaze drift toward the corner where she knew Arya would be even if she couldn't see her. Arya moved through Winterfell like a rumor. We have enough advisors, Sansa said. Peter's smile did not falter. Do you? His tone held no accusation. only a gentle push. The North remembers, they say, but memory can be selective. Your bannermen may follow Jon Snow now, but loyalty shifts when a stronger wind blows. Sansa's heartbeat remained steady. Are you warning me? I'm helping you, Peter replied smoothly. I know what it looks like when a kingdom tears itself apart from within. I've seen it up close. So have I, Sansa thought. I was the torn thing. She let a hint of frost enter her voice. If you know the look of treachery so well, perhaps it's because you've studied it. Peter's eyes gleamed, amused rather than offended. I study everything, he said. It's why I'm still alive. Sansa took a slow breath. What is it you want, Lord Baelish? The corridor's torches hissed softly. Somewhere distant, a door slammed. Winterfell's life continued around them like a river moving past stones. Peter stepped closer, just enough to test the space. I want you safe, he said, and the words came so easily they might have been true. I want the North safe. I want you on a throne that can't be taken from you by a bastard's charm or a foreign queen's dragons. Sansa felt something cold settle deeper in her belly. He knew too much or guessed too well. The word foreign queen hung there like smoke. Had he heard the name Dragonstone whispered? Had he seen Jon's posture change? Peter Baelish could build a castle out of half a rumor. You speak of dragons as if you've seen them, Sansa said. Peter's smile thinned. I've seen what men do when they believe in monsters, he said. They become monsters themselves. Sansa's eyes did not blink. Then perhaps we should spend less time believing in stories and more time preparing for what is real. Peter's gaze held hers. And what is real, my lady? He asked softly. Tell me. Let me help you. For a heartbeat, Sansa wanted to laugh. Let him help, like letting a fox guard your hens. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. What is real, she said, is that Winterfell belongs to the Starks, and anyone who forgets that will find the North remembers more sharply than they expected. Peter's eyes flickered, a momentary shadow crossing them. Then his smile returned. I never forget, he said. I only anticipate. Sansa stepped back, ending the space between them. Then anticipate this, she replied. I don't need you. She turned away before he could answer, her spine straight. She did not hurry. She did not allow him the satisfaction of thinking he could push her into flight. As she walked, she felt a presence in the corridor's shadow shift. Arya, unseen, moving like a blade sliding into a sleeve. Sansa did not look at her, but she spoke quietly as she passed. Keep watching him, she murmured. A soft sound, almost nothing, answered, the kind of acknowledgement that could have been the wind. Behind her, Peter Baelish's gaze lingered like a cold hand on the back of her neck. At the far end of the corridor, Jon Snow turned a corner and vanished from sight, moving with purpose toward a future that felt like a storm front. Sansa watched him go, and for a heartbeat she wished she could pull him back from it, keep him only her brother, only her ally, only her North. But the letter in his hands had changed the shape of the world, and storms did not pause for wishes. Maester Wolkan did not ask why he was being summoned privately. He simply followed Sansa Stark's guard to the tower, his chain glinting in lamplight, his expression composed in the way maesters learned to be when lords hid sharp things under polite words. The chamber he brought them to was narrow and crowded with knowledge. Scrolls were stacked in bundles, books lay open like dissected birds, and jars of ink sat beside powders Jon did not recognize. A brazier burned low, casting warmth that fought the tower's damp chill. Jon Snow stood with Sansa and Davos close behind him as Wolkan took the parchment with careful hands. The maester's eyes moved over the script, precise and clinical. His face gave nothing away. You said this was found in the crypts, Wolkan said at last. In Lyanna Stark's tomb, Sansa replied, voice even. Wolkan's eyebrows rose slightly. That is unusual. Jon's fingers curled. Can you tell if it's real? Wolkan set the parchment down and reached for a small lens, holding it up to the ink. He peered, shifting the angle. Then he took a fine brush and dipped it into a jar, touching the edge of the paper with something clear that darkened it for a moment and then vanished. He was silent for a long time. Jon's impatience coiled tighter with each heartbeat. Davos stood with arms crossed, watching Wolkan the way a sailor watched the sky for signs of changing wind. At last, Wolkan straightened. "The ink is old," he said. "Not ancient, but not recent. The hand is noble, educated. It matches other letters I have seen from the late Lord Rickard Stark's household." He glanced toward Sansa. There were samples kept. Sansa's face did not change, but Jon felt her relief like a small shift in the air. "And the seal?" Jon asked. "The dragon." Wolkan's mouth tightened. "That seal could be forged," he said, and Jon's stomach dipped again, but then Wolkan added, "Yet the wax itself is old. The crack patterns, the drying. It has sat in a sealed space for many years." He picked up the ring next. When his fingers closed around it, even Wolkan flinched slightly at the cold. "Dragonstone?" Wolkan murmured, and Jon felt the word land like a hammer. "You know it," Davos said. Wolkan nodded. "I have seen stone from Dragonstone before," he said. "The Targaryens favored it for ornaments and keepsakes. It holds heat differently than northern stone." He held the ring up to the lamplight and squinted at the band. "There are markings here." He took a small knife and carefully scraped away a thin film of grime from the gold, then used the lens again. Jon leaned in despite himself. The symbols were tiny, 3 heads intertwined, a pattern of flames, and beneath it, barely visible, a line of script. Wolkan read it silently, then spoke aloud, voice soft. "Rhaegar." Sansa's breath caught. Jon felt as though the floor had shifted beneath him. Wolkan looked up, his expression still controlled but no longer detached. "This is not a common man's ring," he said. "It bears the name of Prince Rhaegar Targaryen." Jon's mouth went dry. He forced the words out. "So the letter. It is not proof beyond all doubt," Wolkan cautioned, as maesters did when standing near blades. "But it is strong evidence. The kind that would convince learned men." His gaze flicked to Jon. "And it is dangerous." Davos gave a humorless snort. "Everything worth having is." Sansa's voice was steady, but Jon heard the tension beneath it. "Could you copy the letter?" Wolkan hesitated. "A copy is not the same," he said. "And if a copy is found, it raises questions. But could, if you insist." Jon shook his head once. "No copies yet," he said. The thought of this truth multiplying on paper made his skin crawl. "Not until we know what we're doing with it." Wolkan nodded slowly, as if relieved not to be asked to create another thread of possible catastrophe. He handed the ring back to Jon, who took it reluctantly, feeling its cold bite into his palm. Sansa looked at Jon then, and for a moment the mask slipped. In her eyes, Jon saw grief, not only for their father, who had carried this, but for the simplicity they had lost. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. Jon closed his fist around the ring. "We go to Dragonstone," he said. He heard his own voice and was startled by how certain it sounded. "We find whatever proof is there." "And if we find it?" Davos asked. Jon looked down at the parchment, Lyanna's words. "Darkness that would swallow castle lights, a realm that must be won. Then we bring it to the living," Jon said, "before the dead take everything." By twilight the snow had begun again, not in thick flakes but in fine grains that stung the skin and hissed when they met torch flame. Winterfell's yard was alive with preparation even without orders spoken aloud. Men mending harness, sharpening steel, stacking firewood. The north was always preparing for something. Jon Snow stood near the stable wall where the wind was slightly less cruel. A barrel had been rolled close and on it Davos had spread a crude map, weighted at the corners with stones. The parchment flapped in the wind's fingers and Davos's hands pinned it down as he traced routes with a blunt finger. "There," Davos said, tapping. "White Harbor. Best chance for ships that won't freeze in the harbor. If we ride hard, we can be there in days. If we're unlucky, a week." Jon stared at the distance between Winterfell and the sea. In the old days, the South had always been an idea more than a place, songs, stories, threats. Now it was an obligation. And Dragonstone, Jon said, his finger moving along the coastline on the map. How far from White Harbor? Depends on the weather and the captain's courage, Davos said. But I've sailed worse. His eyes flicked to Jon's face. You've got the look of a man about to step onto a ship and regret it. Jon huffed a breath. I don't like the sea. The sea doesn't care, Davos replied, and there was a faint hint of humor in it, the kind Davos used like a small lamp in dark places. Jon held the scroll in his hand, sealed but not yet sent. Sansa had written most of it. Jon had added a line with his own hand, rougher, blunter. The ink was still drying. To Daenerys Targaryen, Davos read quietly, peering at the address. He lifted his gaze. A bold start. She might not even be there, Jon said. She might be in King's Landing already. Davos shrugged. Then the raven will chase her, or it'll land on someone's head and peck their eyes out. Either way, it's sent. Jon's fingers tightened around the scroll. He hated how thin words looked when they were meant to carry weight. He hated that his life now hinged on a bird's flight. Sansa Stark stood on the stairway above, half in shadow, watching them. The snow dusted her dark hair and melted, leaving wet strands that clung to her braid. She looked like Winterfell itself, stone and frost and stubborn survival. When Jon met her gaze, she descended a few steps, stopping where she could see the yard and be seen, but not easily overheard. Have you decided what you'll tell the lords? She asked. Jon glanced toward the men in the yard, toward the banners hanging limp in the cold. That I'm going south for Dragonglass, he said, speaking the lie they'd agreed on. Tasted bitter. That I need allies. Sansa's eyes narrowed. And nothing more. Nothing more, Jon confirmed. Davos watched Sansa with a sailor's careful attention. The fewer who know, the fewer who can twist it, he said. Sansa's expression hardened. And the fewer who can betray it, she added. Jon felt the weight of the ring hidden under his glove, the letter tucked close. Betrayal had become a constant shadow in his life. Night's Watch brothers, southern kings, northern bastards. Even love had betrayed him once. He forced his voice steady. I'll leave with a small party, he said. Enough to keep us safe, not enough to draw attention. Good, Sansa replied. And you'll take Ser Davos. Davos dipped his head in a half-bow. Lucky me. Jon's mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile. It died quickly. Sansa's gaze held his, and for a moment the yard seemed to fall away. Jon, she said softly, and he heard the unspoken beneath it. Brother, king, something else. Whatever happens, don't let them use this to turn you into a stranger. Jon's throat tightened. I don't want to be a stranger, he said. Sansa's eyes flicked down to the scroll in his hand. Then remember who you were before any of this, she said. Remember the boy who protected Bran from falling, who tried to make Arya laugh. Remember that you belong here. Jon looked at her, and the words struck him harder than the prophecy. Belonging had always been the wound beneath his ribs. Now the wound had a new name. He nodded once, unable to speak. Davos reached for the raven cage nearby, where a black bird watched with bright eyes, head tilted. Time, Davos said. Jon handed him the scroll. Davos tied it to the raven's leg with quick, practiced fingers, then opened the cage. The raven launched into the cold air, wings beating hard against the wind. It vanished into the gray sky almost at once, swallowed by snow and distance. Jon watched until his eyes watered from cold and strain. Then he turned away, because watching a message leave felt too much like watching a part of himself fly off with it. Before the sun cleared the horizon, Jon Snow went back to the crypts. He did not tell anyone, not Sansa, not Davos. He moved through the sleeping castle like a shadow slipping between stones, torch in hand, cloak drawn tight. The corridors were colder at this hour, the torches lower, their flames small in the face of night's last stubborn hold. The door to the crypts groaned when he opened it, the sound echoing softly down the stairwell. Jon descended, step by step, and the air grew sharper with each one, biting at his lungs. Ghost followed without being called, pale presence at his back. The statues waited. They always waited. The kings of winter sat in their alcoves with stone swords and stone patience, faces carved into permanence. Jon passed them all, his torch painting brief life across their features, and stopped again before Lyanna Stark. Her face was the same as it had been hours before, and yet it felt different now. Jon knew her name in a new way. He knew her choice in a new way. He knew that her blood ran in his veins, and the knowledge made his skin feel too tight. He set the torch into its sconce and stood in the dim light. The crypt's silence pressed down, thick and heavy, as if the dead leaned closer to listen. Jon drew the ring from his glove and held it in his palm. Dragonstone's cold seeped into his skin. He stared at the worn gold band, at the name hidden in tiny script, Rhaegar, until the letters blurred. "I don't know you," Jon whispered, and he wasn't sure if he meant Rhaegar or Lyanna or the man he was supposed to be. Ghost's breath sounded behind him, steady and warm. Jon reached back without looking and brushed his fingers briefly against the direwolf's fur, grounding himself. He placed his other hand on the stone of Lyanna's tomb. The surface was cold, but it was a familiar cold, the cold of Winterfell, of home. His fingers found the seam where he had pried the slab loose, the faint ridge only he would notice now. "Did you know," Jon said softly, "what you were leaving behind?" The stone did not answer. Of course it did not. But Jon heard, in his mind, the echoes of stories. Lyanna riding with hair streaming, laughing at men who thought they could cage her. Lyanna crying out in a tower, dying with her child pressed to her chest. Lyanna writing a letter with shaking hands, hiding it under stone, trusting her brother to do the impossible. Trusting him now in a way she could not have foreseen. Jon swallowed, his throat raw. "I was raised as Ned Stark's bastard," he said, words falling into the dark. "I learned to live with it. I learned to hate it. I thought I'd made peace with it." He breathed out, a cloud in the torchlight. "Now you tell me I was never that." Aegon. The name sat in his mind like a coal. Hot, dangerous, refusing to be ignored. Jon closed his fingers around the ring until the gold bit into his skin. Pain was simple. Pain was honest. "I don't want a throne," he said, voice rough. "I don't want songs. I don't want men killing each other because of what my blood is." He leaned closer to the tomb, forehead almost touching stone. "But I saw the dead," he whispered. "I saw what's coming. If this dream is true, if Aegon the Conqueror saw it, then you were right to hide this. You were right to be afraid." Ghost made a low sound, almost a whine, and Jon glanced back. The direwolf's ears were pricked toward the deeper crypts, as if listening to something Jon could not hear. For a heartbeat, Jon's skin prickled. He forced his breath to steady. "There's no time," Jon said, not to Ghost, not to Lyanna, but to himself. "We either stand together or we fall alone." He straightened, wiping a hand across his face as if the gesture could scrape away the confusion. The torch crackled softly. Dust motes drifted in its light like tiny ghosts. Jon looked at Lyanna's stone face one last time. "If you can hear me," he said quietly, "then know this. I will not let your son be used as a weapon against the North. I will not let your secret become another war while the real war walks toward us." He opened his hand and looked at the ring again. The gold gleamed dully, indifferent. "I will go to Dragonstone," Jon said, and the words felt like a vow spoken before old gods and new. "I will find what you meant me to find, and then I will bring it back, whatever it costs." Behind him, Ghost's breath warmed the air. Jon took the torch from its sconce and turned toward the stairs. As he climbed, the crypts seemed to close behind him, swallowing the brief light. The statues returned to shadow. The dead returned to silence. Above, a pale strip of dawn had begun to creep over Winterfell's walls. Snow fell in thin, quiet curtains. Somewhere in the yard, a raven called, harsh and insistent, as if reminding the living that time moved whether they were ready or not. Jon Snow stepped into the cold morning and pulled his cloak tighter, the ring hidden once more, the letter pressed close, and the weight of a dragon's name carried north in a wolf's body.